Vision of what it's all about filtered through my naive lens. Basically, as I read about it, certain things stayed with me and floated to the very top of my consciousness and troubled my conscience as well as evoked certain passions. Basically, and very timely, it is 100 years since Penn inaugurated International Writers' Day. Well, actually, since Penn began organization. Let me try to get from the beginning slide here. Right. And on its website is this, you might want even to call it a slogan, 100 years, 100, hundreds of voices and more languages than ever. So this is on the website of Penn International, the organization that created the International Writers' Day. Founded in London in 1921. Now its official languages are English, Spanish, and French. But what is happening very interestingly is that it recognized International Mother Languages Day. And this year you had Penn celebrating the languages, the indigenous languages as well. The international organization was created in 1921 by an English writer by the name of Catherine Amy Dawson Scott. So this is 100 years of recognizing the importance of literature. Now, this is what struck me as I scanned, different websites and so on, is this dedication on a monument in Australia to the Penn International. It says the spirit dies in all of us who keep silent in the face of tyranny. And what struck me right away is that sometimes our writing silences us. When it is commissioned by agents of the state, by people who feed us, and people who have turned us into transactional writers, so to speak, in the institutions that we need, that we work in to sustain us. And we forget the original purpose for which we began writing. And I would like us to remind ourselves this evening about this original meaning of the writing. I mean, we can say that writing also began to help us to keep records about how much grain we produced in times, to keep records of our business and so on. Yes, that is that kind of writing. But that is really not the kind of writing that we're celebrating today. The writing that we're celebrating this evening is the writing that keeps pushing against the faces of tyranny everywhere in the world and speaking to human freedom and speaking to power in a brave and bold and brazen way. So much so that such writers have been punished by the agents of tyranny and the servants of tyranny. I mean, I can go on and on about the day and what it means, but this is what sticks out for me. But I also needed to add that Penn has also recognized, in addition to its 3 official languages, indigenous voices from all around the world. So much so that there is a translation and linguistic committee as part of Penn. And we can find online a collection of 5 video poems in indigenous and minoritized languages. And this is what happened this year, the publication of these 5 video poems. And as it says here, the aim of this project was to offer a small glimpse into the diversity of languages in every continent through poems narrated in their original non-hegemonic languages. And I also wanted to alert you to the fact that November 15th will be celebrated as the Day of the Imprisoned Writer. So perhaps we can look forward to keeping a unity and keeping a focus on keeping writing connected to that original spirit for which it was, for which pen was created, and which CATALP now wishes to pay homage to. And without much more ado, I would like to introduce Raymond Owenbring, who is going to ask our presenters to come on tonight.
Hey everyone, thank you very much for joining us. We have a great, what looks like a great program for this evening. We have a mix of students and very accomplished scholars whose work has been noted throughout the region and beyond. So we thank you very much for presenting all of you. So I just wrote the list or the order in the chat, the order of presentations in the chat. Uh, so yes, you will all have 5 to 7 minutes to present. And then afterward, we will have time for 1 to 2 questions per presenter. And then we will move on. So you'll have 6 minutes, and then after 6 minutes, I will give you a nudge that you have 1 minute left. And then we will move on to the questions and then on to the next presenter. So apologies to those of you who I'm not familiar with, and I will not pronounce your names correctly. Anyway, yes, our first presenter will be Karen Ascarali. Please welcome them.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for including me in your presentations. I have to tell you that I know we have a limited time, but I have to say that I'm really honored to be in your presence because you all mentioned about tertiary. You mentioned about the organization being about tertiary writers and belonging to tertiary institutions, but I don't belong to a tertiary institution, but I am a writer of sorts, write very simply, nowhere probably in your league. But what I'm going to share with you all this evening, it's about how I got into writing. I do have tertiary education. I have up to a master's, but I have never, my background was chemistry. And I know that the English people think that we chemistry people don't always write as we don't. I don't. I am more into lists and things like that. But I had an experience in my life that changed my life after teaching at the secondary school level for 22 years. I eventually had to give up because I had a life-threatening injury due to criminal activity here in Trinidad. I'm presenting from Trinidad. And out of that, I was able to write about my experience. And it came only after I had gone through PTSD and treatment for it. And I realized that I could use my story for the greater good. So since then, what I've been doing is using the hurt and pain that came about from such a sudden and devastating loss. I've been able to use that hurt and pain, transform it into something positive. And I use my story as a means of advocating for peace and against violence. So what I want to share with you, or I was going to read, but I think I'd rather just talk if you don't mind. And so what I wanted to share is that the therapeutic value of writing. And I know that all of you would know that, but I just wanted to share with you how much it has helped me. And in helping me, I've been able to help other people as well. So when I started writing, I did it because at the time of my injury, I couldn't speak. So the only form of communication that was left for me was to write. And I started just writing whatever I was feeling or just to communicate to the people who are around me. And I didn't want the people who had to support me to be burdened with all the things that were troubling me. And so I wrote down a lot of stuff that was highly emotional. And I got a lot of it out of my head onto the paper. And I always say this, the paper doesn't judge. It doesn't judge me. I could say anything to that paper. I could write anything. I could use my words in any way. And the paper is not going to judge me. It's not going to tell anybody else unless I leave it lying around. And so what I used to do is write down all these things, scrap it, burn it, or throw it away. But I used to burn because I was afraid if I do throw it away, somebody was going to find it. And what happened was that out of that experience, I wrote a book. Although I'm from the West Indies, I didn't write it in dialect. The book shares on the experience, and every single chapter in the book was built on the framework of the Beatitudes. So one of the things that came out to me in writing the book was that I needed to have a framework. Every time I'm doing a book or I'm doing writing, I need to have a framework on which to build my stories or my story. And I've found that some people don't need it. I mean, you must have some concept of what it is you're going to write. But in my case, I found that I needed a definite framework around which I could build my stories. And so I used the Beatitudes in that first book that's called From Lion to Lamb. It was called A Spiritual Journey because what I didn't share with you, and I didn't think I needed to because it's not about that, it's about the writing. But what I didn't share is that it was an act of gun violence and I was shot, left close to dying, but I survived, thanks to God. And that experience, being able to write out of that really changed a lot of things for me, because in addition to writing the story, I was now able to go through a whole period of healing. And in the healing process, I realized that I could help other people, even with the writing, because many people would come to me after and say that they needed a platform. They had a story and they wanted to tell a story, but some of them were afraid that they couldn't write. They felt that they couldn't write enough to fill a book. And, I always use myself because I'm not the best of writers, but I had the courage, I had the confidence to be able to put it down into writing and put it out there, knowing that I would be criticized, knowing that it's not the best, but I knew that my message was a powerful message. And I did use editors. So, I mean, I may not be the best writer, but by getting a good editor, I'm able to get a good quality book out of it. I want to say that I've written several other books since then, and my final book that recently was launched is a collection of stories, and it's written by myself, but also by about 9 other Trinidadian writers. And I think one of those writers is a member of, well, she's the one who sent this link to me. I don't know if you'll know her name, but it's Linda Banks Can. And yeah.
You're done?
Well, I think Raymond.
1 more minute.
Okay, so yeah, so in that book, I have stories by other authors. What I found important, I'll end with this last statement. What I found important in this was that each one of them, they had to write on they had to write an inspirational story based on their own experience, and they got a cathartic effect that they didn't expect would take place when they wrote their story. Some of them had gone through some really terrible things, and they realized that after writing it, there were hurts and pains that they had not even explored prior to writing it. So, my whole story really is just about writing as a therapeutic tool. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share. And I'm finished there now.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for sharing your inspirational story with us. Are there any questions? Yes, as I noted in the chat, please write your questions in the chat. Any questions?
So do I
Okay,
answer
so the
Raymond
question
or?
is,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yes, please.
There are two
The
questions.
question is, go ahead. Okay.
Yes, would you like me to read the first
Carolyn, you're gonna
one?
ask questions?
There's one. Well, two actually. Do you do motivational speaking? And this is directed to the first speaker.
Yes, please go ahead.
Of course. Do you do motivational speaking based on your experience? And how would you use writing to deal with it?
Yes, I do. Well, I call it inspirational speaking because I'm not so charismatic that I consider myself motivational, but I've found that the story, in sharing the story, people are inspired, and they're inspired to having hope regardless of what their situation is. And I'm faith-based too. I'm a Christian, so I speak from a Christian platform as well. And for me, that's a great privilege because I'm able to share about Christ and about the gospel and so on. I'm seeing in terms of using the writing, yes, I do use it because why I use it, I show people that things bad may happen, but you don't have to allow the bad things to keep you down, that you can find different ways, including writing, to be able to rise above it and to create a positive impact. Somebody asked here too, I'm seeing this one, did you ever have an opportunity to confront your assailants? And the answer to that is no. I don't know who did it. It was at night, and they were criminals who were on the run from the police at that time, and they were just looking to get a getaway vehicle. I happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that was it. To date, the police have never contacted me. This is about 8 years ago. I don't think they ever picked up with those people. In terms of therapeutic writing having a place in academic literacy curriculum, I don't think I'm the best person, but I'll give my answer and somebody else might be able to give a better answer. My answer would be yes, that I do think it has a place in the academic literacy curriculum because a lot of therapeutic writing would involve reflective writing, which is very, very important in all the different subjects. And it can be infused in a variety of ways, including even as one-on-one counseling sessions or group sessions.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to ask one of my colleagues to take over. My computer is not behaving right now. I will try to rejoin them.
Any more questions?
I think those were her two questions, and if there are any others, they'll have to come after the other presenters. So
Okay.
just to thank
Carolyn.
you, Askarali, for joining with us and presenting from your very specific and particular perspective. And now we're going to go on to Kiefer Burke. I think Kiefer is our student. Is she here, Kiefer? Okay. I'm not seeing Kiefer. So
I'm seeing her, but she probably is not. She's muted. Huh?
We're not hearing you, Kiefer. You're still muted.
I'm still muted.
yes, you're okay now,
hearing you.
Kiefer.
Yeah. All right. Hold on. How about now?
Yes,
No,
it's okay
we're hearing you, but you're muted again.
still.
Muted again.
Is this better?
Yes.
I guess it's my earphones then. I'll just not use them. Okay, so good afternoon again, everyone. I hope everybody is doing well. It's a pleasure to be a part of this event. And just to go into a little bit about myself, I'm a UTech student, third year. In the studying Bachelor of Arts in Communication, Arts and Technology. So basically I'm a media student. I am a part of a society called 876 Poets and Poetry Club. The Poetry Club is a part of UTech, and the 876 poetry group is outside of UTech. I started doing poetry last year, actually not last year, 2019 of November. Sorry about that. So I started in November 2019 at an event called Tales of Autumn, where I did my first ever public poetry performance, and it basically catapulted me into serious poetry since then. As Miss, I can't pronounce her last name, but as the speaker before me mentioned, the inspiration came from healing. I wasn't physically injured, but as persons, we experience trauma, childhood trauma, growing up and stuff like that. In that year, I experienced healing, meaning I felt whole. I felt like I've never been hurt or broken before, and out of that flowed an abundance of creativity. And so I started to write, and I have basically 2 pieces that I'm about to do. They're not very long, but I hope you enjoy them. Is everyone ready?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this one is entitled I Know My Roots. I Know My Roots. I was supposed to perform this in February 2020, before the whole pandemic, for an event called Ethos X, which was, ultimately canceled. So here goes. I know my roots. Though conditioned to conform to a society with a false identity, this mind was never relegated to the confines of the zinc fence. And already everything is beginning to make sense. But whose report will you believe? Our history is like an uprooted tree. We branched off into religious lies and forbidden soul ties, black on black crime, political distractions, racist interactions, plagiarist transactions. There is more than just monetary limitations of being Black, but it's never really been about money or anything like that. I've never really been good at math, but I feel like I calculated correctly when I figured if the cost of freedom is equivalent to life, then that means that leaves a man with 1 to share among his 4 kids and none to spare for his wife, because truth is there is nothing greater than freedom, which is really a subset of time. See, I know my roots. Though conditioned to conform to a tainted society, this mind was never relegated to the confines of the zinc fence. And already everything is beginning to make sense. But whose report will you believe? They tried to erase the Black out of Black history, believing a slightly cracked history, got our Black men on crack history just to say that it was Blacks who cracked history. It's not exactly what it's cracked up to be. This battered and bruised is a mixture of culture. See, we've been in the kitchen cooking up freedom. After we not trust them with the pot, you know how much lie them feed we and pills to swallow after that? 6s for 9s and white collar crimes internalized. We are color to the canvas. But have you ever noticed the red line that comes under a name that implies an error? Because it didn't meet English standards? Well, to hell with standards and to hell with English. Told we were born in a third world country when the truth is we are more than the first world. We are the whole world. I am Nigeria. I am Uganda. I am Dubai. I am Jamaica, Libya, Nairobi, Syria, Rwanda. I am the very depth of the Sahara Sea. I am Jam African. So of course I can, and I have. Inuka watu wangu, sisi ni wenye nguvu. Google me, and you will find truth and life in the words that I utter. Black history could never be just a month when Black is imperial and history is forever. So that was my first piece. Just going to go straight into the second one. I don't want to go over my time. So this one was very, would I say young or old? I wrote this just at the beginning of coming into poetry. It's very quirky and humorous, so I hope you guys get my jokes. It's entitled Shots Fired. So I went to do a photo shoot. I was on set, prepped and ready to shine. I'm telling you, I was Jada Pinkett, Halle Berry, and Angela Bassett. In my mind, I was divine. I got fully attired. I did a dash of stay out of the business of him and her because malice and gossip just don't compliment my curves. I sprinkle up eyeshadow my braid because it's not about the fast life or what I like. It's about my purpose and shining my light and this glow. So I got in my zone and I struck my pose. But then the photographer asked, can you make your hair lay down and your edges swoop? Can you give me less lip, a little more hip, and a little less attitude? He said, can we do something to make her boobs pop? And turn up the brightness of her skin. That's a bit too much melanin against the backdrop. So I decided to stir up things like twins of twins. I said, sir, are you a photographer or a police officer? He said he'd been in the shooting business for 30 years. I said, well, how many children do you have? He said, nil. I immediately began to question his shooting skills since by the looks of things, he's having trouble firing the cannon he was born with. All that was left was for him to ask me to drop my standards to the floor, snap, crop, and edit my value for him. Little did he know that my personality won't hold on his 32 gig memory card. Yes, I am more. So plug them up from your ear and hear me clear. Correction, my hair isn't nappy, it's kinky and curly. Correction, my skin isn't black, it's mixed with chocolate and caramel clay. Correction, I'm not stupid, I merely understand that the logics and physics behind love just do not exist. It's just this chemistry scientifically combined with artistry, a creation more divine than mine. And excuse me, but I'm about to get a little passionate about this because anxiety and insecurity was my arch nemesis, a glitch in my system, error correction. Don't white me out or write me off because counting me out will just piss me off. Correction, I'm not angry. I am serious about my purpose and the worth of my being. I'm finally comfortable in the skin. I'm in awe of my own beauty, starstruck by my wit, certain about my earthly duty, and I plan to pursue it. I am worthy of every penny, jewelry, expensive accessory, wealth. I do not waste time on my grind like my waistline and my behind. I'm working. You can't afford this. So forget trying to cash, debit, credit, or check my attitude. I'll wring my neck in circles around your small mind that was designed to put my design in a box. See, my beauty is too much to fit in your frame of mind. I'm a cutie, but I'm no sleeping beauty. I am woke and ready to make heavy strides compared to Cinderella. I am hella thick, no glass slipper, but still fit to be a bride. So call me the princess of petty. Better yet, call me the queen of rhetorical questions, sarcasm and irony, or whatever. Just put me in focus. I am the center of attraction in this shoot. Aim at me. This time, shooting your shot is your actual responsibility. Thank you.
Raymond, are you back in? Just checking. I'm seeing you.
Yes, I am back.
Okay. All right.
Okay, well, thank you for those inspirational poems. Yes, do we have any questions?
Could we hear a little bit more about the poetry group that you belong to? Some of its activities?
Okay, thank you so much for that compliment, Miss Karen. So the poetry group 876 Poets is basically, it's really an organization which, you know, they do poetry events, artistic showcases, and so on. I was introduced to it by one of my classmates who is a part of the poetry club at the University of Technology. So it's been around for about 2 years, and there are some really, really talented people who are part of the group. But our main dilemma is that there aren't many opportunities to showcase our talents. We have to create those opportunities and hope that we get recognition or even sometimes I don't want to say compensation, but monetary benefits from our, you know, effort.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Greaves.
Very impressive. Yes. So are there any other questions? Okay, let us move on to, we are lucky enough to have Velma Pollard with us today, who is going to present some of her work for us. You have the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. In my 6 minutes, I'm going to read a short piece of prose and one poem. I'm a retired lecturer who writes. I suppose everything that I write can fall under a rubric of colonized, I think. That's as general as I can get to cover everything, colonized. So, okay. So this piece is, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Yes, we can.
Okay. This is Heathrow in retrospect. It wasn't the first time I was in Heathrow. It might have been the 4th or 5th. And I don't remember why I was there. Meeting somebody, leaving, or arriving myself, I don't know. But I was at the British Airways counter and gazed out along the concourse to behold, and quite unexpectedly, the British Empire on which the sun never sets. Well, what a revelation. Suddenly I felt that I was England, called upon after all to put my money where my mouth lie, accepting the pun. All those on whom the sun had not set were along that concourse. Ladies with head covers like hats beekeepers wear, and mesh right down to the chin. People you were sure could never eat for all the tackle on nose and mouth, nor go to the bathroom for all the skirt and trousers at their legs. There were dazzling saris there with brown love handles smiling at aging waists, black hair thrown open at the seam to accommodate one deep red spot, and tall men, each with his finely wrought fez, walking as if flowing skirts and sandaled feet were help, not hindrance to unreasonable speed. No one had warned the British in their mad rush into expansion that this contraction here at Heathrow would be likely. They had not then conceived of fast ships or of aeroplanes, linguistic skill, and wild ambition that would bring all shades of black and brown and white to this one shelter, and the cruel irony of children of the empire, brothers all, at Heathrow, and amid the bustle on Oxford Street, returning from the colonies now to retire, an old limey asks, is there still space for an Englishman? Now the poem is called Portobello, which is a place where Francis Drake died, Sir Francis Drake. Now, I don't know why from early school days I chose him to hate. I don't know that he did anything worse than all the other people we were reading about, but for some reason, I could not appreciate him at all. So, I stood where Drake fell. Francis forever on my mind. I don't remember how they say he fell, or who, if anyone, felled him. I only know forever I have felt this senior pirate, honored till my time, remembered still in names of great hotels and water passages, deserved to fall. Somebody must have said, cutting her eye, this one for dead bad. Here he died, how bad I cannot tell. Green hills look towering down on that fair strand that looks in turn out to a tranquil sea. From ancient lookouts, standing still, remembering all the El Moro signatures of Spain. Now little children clamber up the ramp, looking at cannons, touching their rusted mouths, free from all fear. The smell of powder fired from these guns envelops all my air. No tablet holds his name, only ancestral murmurs, mouthing words, remind me, here he died. Aquí se murió. Il falleció. These words in syllables his spirit does not recognize. Yet it is fitting that he should die here, unless he could die everywhere. Here where a tract of land links the Atlantic and Pacific. Here where best represents all island histories, new nomads wandering. How could Drake know that galleons would bring here slaves yearning to fulfill dreams that were dreamt before their fathers' futures? Dreams to construct the awesome interlocking locks, lakes, canal that would connect Carib and South Sea against divine design? This jot of land making the two worlds one. So here I stand, smelling the blood of Drake, smelling gunpowder, seeing mingled sailors, soldiers, spirits pushing metal, feeling this deep and satisfying end, conclusion to some things. Drake did die here, and while I smile, small children stare and wonder, whispering underneath their hands, La Loca, she mad. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I see we have one question so far from Karen Deich. How old were you when you started writing, and was it sparked by a specific event or circumstance?
Could you repeat that for me?
So, how old were you when you first started writing, and was it sparked by a specific event or circumstance?
Well, I first wrote, as far as I can remember, for something called an ISTED that we used to have at elementary school, and everybody was invited to write a poem. So I wrote one about death, and it won. So it was put up on the school wall, you know, they do that. And so that's where it started. You know?
Okay, please write your questions once again in the chat. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Yes. Oh. Jennifer.
Yeah, I can read that. Does history influence the themes? All right. Yes, I'm afraid so. I mean, I didn't study history. History is not, you know, I passed history in high school, but my focus, my research is not historical, but obviously almost everything I write is connected with the history that we have been taught, with the history I have lived, etc. So yes, very much so. In fact, I find myself regretting that I didn't study history formally, that history was not included in my selection of subjects at university. But history really foregrounds a lot of what I write, or backgrounds it.
Okay, thank you once again for sharing.
You're welcome.
Okay, yes, let us move on. Trishelle Shifun, you're up next on the agenda. You have the floor if you're here. Are they here?
I don't see Trishelle in the room. I will try to make contact with her.
Okay, why don't we move on to the next person and then see if she can make it for later. Okay, so that looks like Carolyn Deitch will be next.
Okay, I will not be sharing from my own work. I do write, but I haven't written anything of any work for a long time. I'm sharing from a work by Phyllis Cord, who died last year and who taught in our academic literacy program at Mona for several years, and in fact was is a person who developed the manual that we use now in one of our courses for the students who are in terms of having English language proficiency challenges. I don't know, I see the book I'm holding up. It's called Unchained, A Caribbean Woman's Journey Through Invasion, Incarceration, and Liberation. And I'm sharing from chapter 6, which is called, is under the hunger strike that Phyllis, I guess, engaged in while she was in prison. So I'm going to share, if I can, I got the time, 3 short excerpts from the same chapter. I've kind of hopped and jumped, but I hope it's still cohesive. By the time the court session is held in October, I am very weak, on the point of collapse. I'm afraid that should this occur, I will be removed without Stone Age, the sadistic prison guard's treatment of me being known. I managed to call out to the judge that I have been on a hunger strike for several weeks, and I'm denied seeing the doctor of my choice, as is an untried prisoner's right. The voice is very strong for someone who has not eaten for several weeks, the judge responds sarcastically and with obvious disbelief. This charge against the prison authorities being publicly uttered, however, he can't ignore my complaint. He ordered that 3 doctors, including one of my own choice, are to examine me. Dr. Peter Figueroa, whom I know personally, travels from Jamaica. His calm manner and his advice as to how to withstand isolation are to save my sanity during the months and years ahead. Get accustomed to time moving slowly and use your time to pay attention to little things, he suggests. For example, watch the movement of the sunlight across your wall. Then on, I not only watch, but like an old woman warming her bones in the sun, I sit in the small patch of sunshine which glows on the cell's concrete wall and floor for about 15 minutes each morning. I cannot see how I look, for prisoners are not permitted mirrors, and I'm quite unaware that most persons do not survive such a long hunger strike. I have done so only because my weight loss has been slower than usual, because I suffer from a low thyroid condition, and the doctor has withdrawn my thyroid supplement, causing my metabolism and thus my body's consumption of its fat reserves to slow down. I do not consider giving up, for I must win an improvement in my prison conditions. At 82 days without food, I realized that I need to allow more time for the protests of family and friends to take effect. So, for a week, I simply drink a few sips of the cocoa left in my cell at breakfast and supper time and replace it with water. Then I start drinking only water again. I don't feel so badly, I tell myself. If only I had some company. If only I were not alone. But indeed, I am not alone. Tonight, a small creature crouches warily beneath the door of my cell. I lure it in with crumbs of unwanted bread. It will not approach. I, once so trusting, now understand distrust of humans. I toss a couple pieces of bread to the corner of the cell farthest away from me. Still, it will not eat with my eyes on it. I place the bread behind a greetings card to give it privacy. With satisfaction, I watch its tail wave about slightly as it consumes the bread. Then it scuttles away beneath the door. Now I have a visitor each night. Over several feedings, it grows bolder, eats on the open floor, and remains with me a little longer each evening. It even walks around the cell looking for extra crumbs. One evening, I forget to put out the bread. I watch as my little friend nuzzles its usual eating spots. Then, to my surprise, it comes right up to my bed and sits before me, front paws up, balancing on its strong tail, its head cocked to one side questioningly. What happened to my supper? It is clearly asking. Our two pairs of dark eyes meet. I recognize its intelligence, and then, with a sense of shock, its soul. Now I understand deeply what North American Indians mean when they say that all life is part of one great web. Tonight, my own life assumes greater meaning, for in the midst of pain, I have learned a great truth from this small rat. I think is my time up, Raymond?
That's perfect.
Okay.
Yes. Interesting choice. Question. Why did you choose this particular passage?
I shared it because with the theme of International Writers' Day being human rights, I do associate Phyllis with human rights. And certainly when she was in the prison, as a prisoner for 23 years, she fought for prisoner rights, not only herself, but for others in the prison with her. And apart from that, you know, she was a revolutionary who had a lot of ideals in terms of equality and, you know, dealing with injustices and human rights. So I felt that I wanted to pay tribute to that. And when she taught as an academic literacy practitioner, she took a special interest in the students who were repeatedly failing the English language proficiency test and who were doing the developmental course, and actually developed a really successful method of working with them to raise what she calls efficacy and to get them through the test and the course. So that's, you know, I thought that she dovetailed very nicely with both the academic literacies focus and of course the International Writers' Day. So it's a great book for those of you. I mean, it's not just about her ordeal in the prison, but it's centered on that, but it gives you quite a lot of one side of the story, I guess, of the Grenada Revolution and the, you know, the killing of Bishop and that.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Our next presenter is Taryn Boulier. You have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
All right. Taryn Boulier. I'm a bit nervous. Just excuse me for a bit. I've never really heard of International Writers' Day. This is the first time hearing of it, but I am glad that I'm here. I enjoyed everything shared so far. And well, let me see if I can give a little background into writing. Writing has always been something that I enjoyed as a child. I was an introvert. I didn't really socialize a lot. I was always locked up in my room or in some corner by myself. So, you know, from small, I took up writing my thoughts, writing my dreams, creating fictional stories and so forth. Things that I would have stored up for years. I still have them to this day. And, you know, I would go back and look through what I wrote as a child. And, you know, when I think about it, I really did want a career in writing. I wanted to pursue that career, but you know, life happened and I kind of pushed writing in the background. It's like, you know, I haven't done anything serious when it relates to writing, especially like original pieces and stuff like that, or fictional stuff like I would do as a child. I used to do as a child. I haven't done so in a while, you know. But anyways, I would like to share something that I wrote a while back. I can't remember how long ago it was, but I came across it. It has, it's related to human rights. Okay, let me just read it. All right, can everybody hear clearly? Everyone listening? I'm ready to go at it.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, it's called That Serpent. He quietly slithered into her bedroom. She was asleep, her mind filled with happy dreams. But she awoke so suddenly, feeling his coldness beside her. She was frightened. Should she scream? She was about to. Then she thought, maybe I should not. She was afraid. Would he wrap himself tightly around her neck until she can no longer breathe, until she reached death? He moved himself up and down her body, and she trembled. Oh, what was that old snake's intention? Then it came so sudden. He bit her, and she bled. The
You muted yourself.
Sorry about that.
From
Can you guys hear
bled.
me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Start from
Sorry.
bled.
Yeah, a call came in just now. From bled?
Yes.
Oh my. Call again. My apologies. All right, let me go from here. Oh, what was that old snake's intention? Then it came so sudden. He bit her and she bled. The blood was no longer for when she wed. She cried. She cried oh so silently. His venom did not kill her, but she wished it did. Often that old serpent slithered under her sheets, and mother never awoke. She was always asleep. One day, though, she felt brave and disclosed all to mother. She disclosed all the doings of that filthy snake. And mother, oh sweet mother, prayed. She fought and she prayed. And the Lord worked, and his men came. They came and took that serpent away. Ever so often a child gets that serpent's bite, a little girl or boy, be it by day or by night. Let us pray, but also fight. Fight those serpents lurking in the night. That's it.
Wow.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Please write your questions in the chat. Okay. Carolyn asks, that was powerful. Do you see yourself as a children's right advocate?
Yes, indeed, I do see myself as that due to the fact that I am a teacher of small children. I'm a primary school teacher. I've been a primary school teacher for 7 years now. And I work with children between the ages of 6 to 7. So indeed, I am an advocate for their rights. When they're not brave enough to speak up, you know, I want to be that voice for those who are afraid to speak up. So yes, I keep an eye out for all of them. I consider them my own. And, you know, as a teacher, I need to keep my eye open for signs of anything that is not of the normal among my children, so that I would know when I need to step in to be their voice.
So Charlene Wilkinson asks, for all the young writers, have you seen your work impact the real world in the sense of bringing about transformation within communities? So this is for you and any other young writer here that would like to talk about this issue.
All right. Yes, I would like to see my work bring about impact in the real world but then in order for me to make that happen, I would have to bring my work out to the real world. And that's my first step. I want it to get out there because based on things that I would have written, anything that I write, it's always inspired by real life scenarios, things that happen in the real world. So yes, indeed, I would.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is Paul Williams. Is Paul here? Okay. Looks like Paul is not here. Then can we go back to Cheryl Ann Dean? I believe she's here.
Hi, yes, good night, everyone.
Right?
You're all hearing me, right?
Floor is yours.
Yes, I'm Cheryl Ann. Okay, can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay, thanks. I'm really happy that I was able to follow Taryn Bollier on hers because I have a kind of similar story in that way. I'm also a teacher. I have been in the classroom for a long time. I have taught for 22 years, actually. I've taught at all the levels of the education system, from primary school all the way up to university. And I can now tie that portion back to Carlin's presentation from Phyllis Cord because I am currently working on research that is following through on the product that Phyllis Cord did with Carlin Daesh in transforming the Fountain 19 course. Sorry, I don't even know why I'm nervous because I'm not usually. Right. So Phyllis Cord's research inspired work from my end with students in Fountain 19, which are students who are struggling academically, struggling with English writing. Now, even before I get to that, I want to get back to what I have been doing over the years as it pertains to writing and the children, because my original work is actually in literacy, high school literacy. The students that I taught for about 14, 15 years of my career are students who are in high school who are not able to function academically at their grade level. So I will have students who are in grade 7, grade 8, even grade 9, but they're reading and writing in English is all the way at grade 1, even before that. So like at kindergarten level, but they're in high school. So it basically means that they're functionally literate. And my job was really to see if I can take them from that level to where they ought to be to help them to make something of themselves and in life. And I must say that that was the most rewarding part of my work. I am excited about it. I still am excited about it. But the best part of it is to be able to watch children who were not able to read and write, not even their own names, at 12 years old, 13 years old, who are not able to go on and do degrees and master's programs and all these things. These are same kids that I taught to read who are able to do that. And in the execution of it, there was always this thread of inspiration, getting them to understand that there's a language difference. So that is how I got involved in linguistics and how I got involved with Phyllis Gordon material. It's because I understand that there is a discrepancy, there's a disparity between the students who function in monolingual Creole and those who function in either bilingual or monolingual English. The students who are monolingual Creole speakers, they are at a woeful disadvantage. And the struggle that I have with that is because I know that it is unfair. It is unfair and it is unjust, because these children are usually very bright. They have such profound ideas and thoughts, and nobody has ever asked them to speak or to write out their thoughts. Because the moment they open their mouth and they start to speak, they're supposed to be stupid and they have no value and they have nothing to share. And in the years and over the decade that I've been working with them, I realized that it's the opposite. These same kids go on to become writers. They go on to write their own stories. They go on to actually make a difference, to be transformed. So the question that Charlene asked earlier about the transformative power of writing, I can speak to that. I can attest to that any day. And from every spectrum of the education system, because I've been at all the levels. And anyhow we can actually capture these kids and harness their truth and their skills and their ideas in whatever language they come to you with, you can actually see more of it. Today, I hope I'm not going over because I can talk a whole heap about this. Today, I had multiple classes throughout the course of the day today. So I took the opportunity of speaking to them about International Writers' Day. And this is what is so sad, because too many of them have absolutely no interest in writing. They don't see it as something that is worthwhile doing. They don't see it as something that they can channel their pains, channel their excitement, channel their passion through. So as a teacher, it has always been my number one objective to let them take a step back, sit down, and process their ideas. And in very bite sizes, just put your idea down, and it's okay. It's right. The first thing should never be that is wrong and that is foolishness, which is basically what they hear. And when I finish talking to them, they actually now consider a path or consider, even just making an attempt to write and to speak more and to share more of their ideas. So that's basically what I wanted to contribute today, just to say that this is really good work. And thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity to speak about this. Thank you.
Yes, Cheryl's doing some really innovative work, and we look forward to reading the final project.
Yes. Oh, Dr. Daesh is asking about replacing writing with oral performance. Yes, that happens a lot. So when they go to class and they have the ideas, I allow them to speak out their ideas versus writing at first instance. So they speak it out and they're given the opportunity to get it out in their first language. And then once that happens, what I do, and it is tied to the project that I'm working on now, with the bilingual biliteracy program that I have with the university students, they are allowed to express their ideas first in their first language, and then we translate for them into English. And the results have been spectacular. The students, the feedback that I got at the end, because I'm still in the writing stage of it now, putting all of the data together, but the challenge that they're having is, a lot of them actually say it's not even so much a challenge, but they're like, why didn't anybody tell me this before? You can literally see the frustration, because they know they would have been better writers and they know they would have had a better experience with reading if somebody had explained to them that there was value in what they had to say. value in what their opinions are and their thoughts. So we're not even touching the surface. We're just basically touching the surface of what the challenges are for our people. So it just yeah, there's a lot of issues surrounding why our students go through the things they go through. Tell us a bit about the innovation. Okay, so inspired by Phyllis Cord, I'm responding to Dr. Dash's question. Being inspired by Phyllis Cord, myself, Carolyn Dash, and Hubert Devenish, we basically came up with a project, and the project was inspired by the work I did in the primary and high schools. What we would do is we would give instruction in Jamaican, right? So I would go to the class and it's pure patois talk. So from going in the morning until the class done, a patois. I'm gonna want none of them to try to tell me nothing in English because I don't want to create a situation where them feel uncomfortable. So I summer talk to them in the class. I'm gonna say, all right, come, let me hear what you have to say now, because I know you have things to say. And once I present to them in Jamaican, and they start looking at me, because the first thing we realize is that they give you this look like, oh my God, is my lecturer actually using Jamaican? I don't even know if I should answer her. The title that I have actually given to the project is What Could I Cause This? And the reason why I chose that title, because when I went in, I didn't have any. And I chose that title because one of my students actually said that. When I started speaking in Jamaican, I insisted, look here, a peer pattern wanted to talk in the class because all I in here have sense on now. One like so now, I'm not sense and I'd be in English. The students in the class, I don't know which one, out loud though, said, then what could I cause this? So of course, I was floored. I just started laughing. And I said, okay, that's the title of my paper. What could have caused this? And it is from so many dimensions that we can figure out what could have caused this. Presenting the same topics that they have to do in the Fountain 19 course, all I did was teach it to them in Jamaican. So they had to complete the same assignments and everything, but when they were writing their reflections, they had to do it twice. So they did it in Jamaican first, as the first draft, where they were allowed to fill the page, get your ideas out about whatever the topic was, let all of your ideas out on paper. And I even spent some time doing Cassidy, the Cassidy JLU writing system, taught it to them, and then allowed them to write in it. So they were free to express themselves, and it was awesome. Then once they were done, they were able now to write the same reflection in English, right? So I've been doing this from my students for about 10 years ago. So it's something that it's easy for me to follow through on. So I moved from the high school into the university program with it, being inspired by Phyllis Cord. There is another way. There is another way for us to get past our prejudices, get past our linguistic bigotry, and just deal with people as human beings and respect and trust that they are smart and that they can do it. Is it possible to have the same reflection? Absolutely. The thing is, the expression of the ideas are different, but it is in fact the same thing. So what they do is, because you want to create a situation, I know we can probably go on with this forever, but what they do is they express it one way, because to express something in Jamaican is different from how you would express it in English, but you're talking about the same thing. So the translation is not a one for one, it's not a literal like word for word, what we call gloss. It's moving from an interpretive meaning as well. So you write it and then you interpret how it would and should be said in English. Yes, I heard about the medical research that doctors explain differently, and that is a whole different that is a whole different kettle of fish, because we really do have to talk to the doctors about it. The thing is, What is good about that, the medical field, is that they are actually open. Well, some of them, some people, because I have had, yeah, it's some of them. Some of them still are challenged by the fact that they really should speak Jamaican, even though they understand the value in the medical field. They do understand the value, but they still feel challenged by it. There has to be some change in culture. There has to be some policy things as well. Policy positions have to be taken. And then we can probably see some stuff happen. Because if you leave everything open to just people deciding what they want to do, they can just decide not to. And they can find all of the reasons and explanations as to why they should not. But if you make something policy, then the legal profession, the medical fraternity, the media, everybody will have to respond. Education system, the education system understands its value. And this is what baffles me, because the education sector understands the value, but they never practice it. And I'm blown away by that in and of itself.
Yes, this is really, really important work. Once again, and I look forward.
Yes, thank you.
Look forward to reading the completed article.
Yes, I'm working on that as well. I'm working on that plus my MPhil work. So I have a lot going on, but I'm definitely on top of it.
Okay.
I have a lot going on.
Yes, you've obviously opened up a lot of really interesting issues, and
yeah, I realized.
Let's move on.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Okay, I believe that is all the presenters we have for today.
Oh, nice.
Raymond, I asked a question that I would like Cheryl and Dean to
sure.
answer. It's in the chat.
Okay, let me look. I'm sorry.
I could read it for you. It's how may writing be redefined to acknowledge the ideas of Creole speakers? Because just listening to you speak seems as though you have a definition for writing that is different from the mainstream. As in, composing.
Yeah. I was looking back for the question. Could you say it again? Because I was distracted by looking for the question. I shouldn't have done that.
Okay, that's fine. How may writing be redefined to acknowledge the thoughts and ideas of Creole speakers?
All right. The traditional form of writing that we teach is that you are expected to write in the standard language, right? So that's the traditional expression. You are to go through a process where you do your pre-writing and so on, and your editing and proofreading and all of that. So there's a process that we teach. I can only speak from the education part of it. We do not have enough we don't have enough training happening in Jamaican, in the Creole form, to have everybody, my internet is in trouble. We don't have everybody being able to read techniques. Yeah, I realized. I'm sorry about that. It gave me a thing that says my internet's unstable. Is it any better now?
Certainly.
Okay, right. So because we have some challenges with the writing, the teaching of the literacy of Jamaican, we are still struggling to get that to the students, because it's a struggle to even teach the teachers how to do it, more so to teach the students. So the traditional form of writing, the process of writing, cannot take place until we have structured that. What I do is I encourage oral tradition, and then I will now use the oral form. So when they speak to me, I would now write for them, usually on the board or on the computer, now that it's COVID time. I would write back for them exactly what they say in Jamaican, and then give them an opportunity as a class activity to try. And then once they have that, then they can pattern that into a translation of other ideas. So I would ask the question like, Run go give Miss the book. And I would ask the student, how would you say that in English? Run go give Miss the book. And they would say, Run, go and give Miss the book. Right? So at that point you go, no, that's not exactly how that translates. So it becomes a fun activity, and then they start to feed me with other things for me to write. So I would write it out, and then they would see how it translates. But like I said, the challenge is you don't have a lot of teachers who would have that training, who would be able to do that kind of writing process with the students and start from the oral tradition, write it down, let them see it, and then be able to do their own translations. And it gets more and more sophisticated as they get comfortable with it. So that's the process.
Well, acknowledge is mild. I should say, validate their thoughts and ideas.
Yes.
Thank you
validate
so much.
Their thoughts. Yes.
Yeah,
thank you.
Sure.
Okay, are we going to move on to Dr. Deitch again for the discussion?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, I am going to put a question, and we think we have kind of touched a bit on it in terms of some of the conversation we've been having with different presenters. But one of the things that, as we, as an association, decided to celebrate this International Writers' Day, and as we realized that, in fact, it was linked to this causes to do with human rights and writers in exile and at-risk writers, so that there was actually much wider kind of dimension to the day, because originally we just thought it was a day for any kind of writer. And we decided we would honor their intent in terms of the International Writers' Day. And the question we were wondering is, in terms of our students as academic literacy practitioners, do we see an intersection in any way? Is the purpose of International Writers' Day, does it have any kind of meaning or significance for academic literacy courses, or could it, should it? That's what we wanted to just throw out there as we, bring this forum to, or for you to think about. And if you certainly, in terms of what people have been speaking about, using writing for therapy, or very first presenter spoke very personally and deep and movingly about how she became a writer because of this traumatic violent incident that happened. But in terms of how we do our classes, because part of the question we were asking is that, we're very, in a sense, focused on process and on strategies, giving students strategies, and on the code, the linguistic code of English in terms of language proficiency. But when it comes to the whole business of what's happening in the wider world in terms of, politics or human rights and justice, it oftentimes is not mirrored in our courses. So the question is, should we, is it something that we would want to leverage in these types of courses, and I guess if so, how?
I was thinking about it in the same way, and using the same platform or the same project idea that I had, particularly when it comes on to Creole speakers and at-risk speakers. We really should be, getting more writers out in the Creole language, in Jamaican, encouraging that kind of academic literacy, encouraging them to produce their work in the form that is theirs. We have certain expressions that we use when we say, I was talking to a parent yesterday, and she said, when Andrew Holness was talking to the public, talking to the nation on Sunday, you know, he must go down to fit them level when he might talk. And I'm like, go down, what? Go down to his level. So right away, because she was well intentioned, but it still comes across as if the persons who speak Jamaican is somehow below them. Or if you choose that form, it is below what everybody else is expecting, even though it is not understood. Our job as instructors really should be to meet our students where they are in the language that they speak. Because if you go to a French classroom, you would not presume that they should speak to you in English. They have a language. So why aren't we teaching our literacies, our academic literacies, in the language that is the mother tongue of our students? I argue that we can.
Okay, I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that, or
I'd
Yes.
like to make a comment. First, to congratulate Cheryl on what she's been doing, you know, right up the absolutely correct and useful street. But with regard to International Writers' Day, I think it's a good opportunity to think of language as international, and therefore a variety of languages. And as you just said, you don't go into a French classroom and expect to hear English. I was thinking of a teacher of blessed memory now, who had his class write a play, and act out a play in Jamaican. Most of this action took place in a restaurant. And then he said, well, if we want to send this play to Australia, they don't know patois, which is what the play was in. So let us see if we can have the subtitles to send with the play to Australia. And I thought that by making the activity so meaningful and useful, international in a sense. So I was thinking International Writers' Day can encourage us to think of Jamaican Creole, Spanish, French Creole, all these languages as languages that real people speak, and to share with them and then with us. Well, our language is international. So I'm saying, to me, that kind of push, that is one of the things that International Writers' Day may help us to see clearly.
I would like to comment, or to not necessarily to comment, but to add something, you know, add a response to the question, you know, how significant or meaningful is International Writers' Days for the teaching of academic literacies? No, I think International Writers' Day, you know, should signal to students that they are writers. And something else that it should do is also disrupt the notion of who is a writer. You know, a writer is not necessarily somebody who has titles behind or in front of their names, you know, speak standard English, but, you know, they too have a voice. And so validating their thoughts and ideas will empower and encourage them to write what they are thinking, you know, rather than being fearful of how their writing would be perceived, right, based on their language or other prejudices. So I think something that is important in the teaching of academic literacies is to make students own the fact that they are writers, because if they feel insecure about their thoughts and their ideas and what they have to say, then it will not be transferred to paper so that it can be shared or to other digital medium. So I think International Writers' Day has a role to be celebrated as something that everybody can own, because if you have a voice, you can write. You know, what you think, you can write, and what you write, you can read.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we're seeing some really, I like the focus. The Cheryl and was focusing, Velma was focusing on the International Writers' Day. I think that was Claudette a while ago who was focusing on the writers, the fact that, they are writers. And I mean, the second part of the question asks for the teaching of academic literacies, which really has to do with trying to empower them within the academy in terms of the work that they have to do there to write. And so oftentimes it's within the context of research papers, essays, integrating sources, all of these academic practices that students feel are very far from who they see themselves as. They don't see themselves as budding academics, really. They have many different reasons for coming into the academy. And so I wonder if it couldn't be a day also to acknowledge the whole of the students, to be more holistic in terms of the different selves of the students. Because I remember one semester I went through one of the writing courses, and it wasn't until the very end that the student had to do an oral presentation that I realized that there was this young man, Randy McLaren, who was an amazing poet, dub poet, and he's a performer, and and I was just thinking, there he was in the class the whole time, and there was nothing really in how we were approaching, teaching them in terms of looking at, at the types of the styles and the different genres and all of the things we expose them to in terms of the writing process that gave him an in terms of his own identity.
Something else that I find too is that when students are given writing tasks, in their minds, they are writing for the teacher. So they tend to want to find out what is it the academic literacies, instructor value, and that's what they give to them. And I think in the teaching of academic literacies, whether it is real or not, we should let them think that there's an audience outside of the teacher who is marking the paper. So they should visualize, that's who is reading the paper, and they should write to interest them rather than trying to write in a way that pleases the teacher and in a way losing their own voice. I don't know if anybody finds that when they teach.
Anyone else wants to weigh in on this question? Is it provoking any thoughts that you want to share?
Yes, I would endorse.
I just wanted to say one thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Velma, and then Charlie.
Yeah, I'm thinking that one of the things that teachers might want to do is in terms of the material that you bring to students. I'm just thinking about the extent to which I use somebody like Mutabaruka, like talking about migration, say. And when I found that when you use material like that and see how international it has become, it helps to strengthen this whole notion of our language as one of the languages of the world. So I think that sometimes we can choose, material that showcases this. I mean, Miss Lou is one of the big ones. I do remember things like Valentine's Day and asking every teacher to bring a poem and something like "My darling, love me, little love," whatever. Just extend the material that we use out into the world of Creole.
Charlene, thanks, Velma. Charlene?
Well, basically, I wanted to say that what's happening to our academic literacies programs is that they simply reflect what the universities are. I wouldn't even say have become, but maybe what the universities are, which are sites that are getting further and further removed from the everyday problems of people. And it seems as though our universities, maybe with very, very few exceptions, I can't pick any exceptions out right now. I don't know what's happening inside of Cuba right now, but they're just there to create a new elite. And then that elite gets really comfortable and the people's problems remain. And the people problems are to be expressed in the languages of the people. So what do you write a paper for, if not to change the world? Why are you writing a paper? So, and I'm finding that more and more, my impatience is growing more and more. And this is why I was very happy for the creation of CATALP, because I saw us as being a force to speak with one voice to our governments, you know, that we would like to play a part. The mission statement of the university, the founding documents of the University of Guyana is about solving the problems of ordinary people.
Yeah, and the Caribbean is not short of problems that need to be solved. Human rights implications.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Right. So, you know, when we give, I know that if you look to the US in terms of I remember a time when a lot of their courses, this debate was happening in terms of the nature of these types of these courses that really had no content to speak of. So, you know, you weren't focused, you know, you were a skills course. And, you know, many persons would, you know, have themes or, you know, actually convert the courses in a sense to be also ways of raising students' consciousness about all sorts of different areas. And of course, linguistics, right, promoting linguistic rights. Linguistic rights is one of the aims of the International Writers' Day. So that whole business of our courses, even not just bringing in, as Velma was saying, Miss Lou or Muta Baruch or our own Creole writers who write, you know, our Creole languages, but just bringing in, putting the spotlight on some of the causes that students, you know, need to know about, and some of them may, or we feel that they might need to know about, or that they are strongly about, you know. We had, Taryn speaking about the, you know, child abuse or in her poem, and we had the violence that started off the presentations by Karen. And, you know, how do we look at this analytically in our courses, so students write about it, but at the same time, it is something that is meaningful and that hopefully, you know, pushes to be change agents in a sense, because I think that's what this day is about, really looking at activism and promoting activism in a sense, writers who are activists.
I mean, if I may stick this into another endangered species is the journalists of the Caribbean, because I mean, they're endangering themselves and they don't realize it, because they're not developing any kind of political ideology that makes them resilient voices against oppression, tyranny, as I began to introduce the whole idea. So they simply, you know, aid and abet without even intending to. They aid and abet the powers that be by simply glossing over or being afraid to speak about. And the journalists are people who have access to communities. Hang a identification card around their necks and they can get into any community. And they don't take advantage of it. And we train them, we train our journalists at our universities.
Yeah. Paul Williams, who didn't turn up to present, is actually a journalist. He's also a creative writer of poems and stories, but it's a pity he's not here to kind of, you know, give a little bit of, you know, inside reaction to that. Okay. Yeah. Anyone else?
Again,
Mm-hmm.
Arlie?
Yes, go ahead.
Right. I just want to recognize Dr. Milson White. I know she has been very quiet, but maybe she wants to tell us a little bit about her work, the books that were published and got one got 2 awards. Dr. Milson White, I don't know if you want to share with us.
Hi, good evening. I did not really come prepared to participate. I was probably more offering moral support to Caroline and the others I know who are leading off on this. But I found this very interesting in terms of the cathartic power of writing that I am now thinking about because of the presentations today, that although we tend to include quite a bit of reflective writing in most of the university courses that I know that are involved with academic literacies, I'm not sure of the extent to which we really exploit this aspect of writing to help students, even beyond just the fact of the code in which students are expected to write or that we are able to allow them to write in. So I'm thinking this is an area that perhaps we should be thinking about some more. The other thing is something that Shirilan said, that we teach a process of writing that involves things like planning and so on, all the way down to editing. But for our purposes in Jamaica and elsewhere in the Caribbean, perhaps we ought to be thinking about other processes of writing in which we engage a little bit more with the oral aspects of our cultures, and that would inform what we can say about processes of writing that I don't think that anyone has really been engaging with in a kind of serious way with regard to exactly what is writing generally and what is academic writing secondarily. In terms of my own work, I guess you have said it in a way, Clover. I think Raymond is still here. My first book is single authored, where I tried to get into the archives to look at what we have been doing primarily in the University of the West Indies system in terms of offering academic literacies programs to students of what I call Creole influenced backgrounds. I don't focus too much on the Creole speaking, as I know we have individuals like Caroline who would be at pains to work fully in Creole or to speak Creole for any extended period. And I try to get a sense of what might have led us to where we're at in terms of, for example, the reluctance to engage with other languages when we say that we are teaching writing, while the focus tends to be on English only. And then in the second book, which is co-edited with Raymond and another colleague, we tried to get in individuals like Clover from elsewhere outside of the University of the West Indies system and outside of Jamaica to look at what we're doing in terms of the work we say we're doing in teaching academic literacies in the English-speaking Caribbean in the main, and try to work through where we might go. What are some of the other things that we can do? But for right now, what are some of the best practices? And then in terms of who our students are, what are other things that we might wish to engage with? That second work got the Mina P. Shaughnessy Prize from the Modern Language Association of America. And it's also going to be awarded in April at the convention of the Conference on College Composition and Communication with an award for Outstanding Edited Collection for 2020-2021.
Thanks, Dr. Mr. White. And Caroline, I just want us to chart a path now based on what we heard, based on what we are saying tonight, because in one of those articles that I wrote, I'm asking us as academic literacy persons to look at ourselves and how we conceive writing, because you cannot just get up and change without first reflecting and questioning what we are doing, and then come to a consensus as where we are to go. And I think as an association now, we must now decide, what do we do next? I don't think we have been very active in this, because we got buried again under the conventional type of teaching. So we keep marking and students doing drafts and so on. And we have been doing this for many years, and we are not really getting where we want to be. So it's calling for a change. But the change has to begin with us before we can then tackle governments and the institutional administration and so on. Because if we first don't know what we're about, then it's going to be difficult to convince others. And as you were saying, how do we see International Day, International Writers' Day, influencing what we do in the classroom? It gives us a purpose for writing. Students seeing that writing is not just about producing something in class to be marked, but it's an expression of their thoughts, their ideas, their dreams and promises and so on. And once they get into that, they tend to want to learn the language more, which they can then use it in the academic context. But first, we have to reach the self before we go to the superficial writing that the academy very often asks for. Because if you're more comfortable with the language, then of course you can write any genre, any purpose that you want to. So
may I add a little thing? A couple persons, I don't know if you're hearing me.
Yes, we are. Go ahead.
Sherilyn here, yes. A couple persons, including Dr. White, talked about trauma. I know I came in a little bit late, so I did not get to hear the first presentation, but I realized that it kept coming up. And again, with Taryn's work, one of the things that really stood out for me in the research, the data gathering, was more than once the students talk, but they would indicate to me that they don't like to write, they don't like to read because it was punishment. They associated with trauma. Several students said this. What they say is that each time that when they were growing up and they were asked to read or to write something, it was with a bus ass, right? So they would get beaten for it. They would be punished severely. So they literally are going through trauma because, not with something else, but because of English, because of language. And so they don't have anything to do with it. They will have nothing to do with this writing thing we're talking about. They worse don't want to read. They come through the university and they're doing these writing courses because they have to. And the sooner them get it done and behind them, the better. So there is something else that we really need to be looking at as a university when we talk about linguistic trauma, because this is real for them. And in the reflections that they write, they talk to me about it, right? So I intend to show some of that in the write-up, but they talk in their reflections about this trauma. It's something we really should be paying attention to, because for the rest of it, we're just going around in circles with this.
May I add also that while Taryn writes about sexual abuse, there is something in the codes about child abuse that if you witness abuse, you don't have to be the abuser, but if you witness the abuse, you are just as culpable if you do nothing about it. And linguistic trauma is child abuse. And we as educators are witnessing it every single day. It is witnessing this because I'm not a linguist that moved me to create the Guyanese Languages Unit to force the issue then. and to keep banging on the doors of UG until people started to open slowly and realize, make sure come through with this thing and let me set it up and see what you're coming with. It is abuse. It is terrible psychological trauma being inflicted on Caribbean children in every part of this Caribbean every single day. What I find really interesting, and I know I'm not following up with research, is that now they are home. Now they are home. What is happening in the homes when this repressive, what I call tyrannical school system, can't really touch them in the way it used to when they were at school, you see. I just went on the road to my neighbor early this morning to take a little boy to get babysat, and her smallest child was absolutely refusing to go to school on Zoom. He preferred to have a good day by himself at home. I mean, there's something about the system that the children know deep inside, but they know we are their bosses, so they go, you know, and we make them go.
Yeah, I think that whole ignoring of our oral practice, of our and also of the whole oral element of communication is really, it's as if, we know that children need to be in a state of readiness to go to school and even to go to move up the educational system, a state of readiness for secondary level, tertiary level. We know many of our students are not ready. And the question is, when we put them in our courses, what do we provide in terms of time and in terms of resources and in terms of approaches to get the students ready, to value what they come with, as Cheryl Ann was saying, and to see how these their oral skills and their languages, the role they can play in our courses. I mean, should that, that first draft or the kind of outline or whatever pre-writing that is done, should it be in pre-writing or should it be some kind of oral production that the students would do to first, deal with the whatever difficult writing tasks they are given. I mean, I'm just talking off the top of my head, but I realize that just as Chloe was saying, that there has been such a paradigm shift with the technology too, with the whole business of, how they're writing online. And then of course, now with them being at home. And these are big, different changes that, we can't ignore and sweep under the carpet. And yeah, there's a lot of work to do, both to write it up, but first of all, to do the work, to do the research and look at best practices. What are the best practices from a Caribbean point of view for our students who are coming in with this trauma, with this writer apprehension, who don't read, they don't read. Okay, they're not only don't they write, but they don't like to read. And reading, once again, was associated with when you're sent to your room to go read a book, So it really is a lot. Okay, well, we are nearly at 8 o'clock now, and we really scheduled to go from 6 to 8. So I'm gonna just ask if anybody else wants to, say any last words, any comments, and then, just do some closing remarks.
I just wanted to make a comment because I've been listening. I've been out of teaching English for quite a few years now, and teaching in terms of writing in English, writing in Creole. I've been out of that, mostly doing Spanish. However, listening to everyone, I'm going away with an idea of the interrelatedness of almost every aspect of our lives, in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of the home, in terms of school life, in terms of abuse of children, sending them to their room to read a book. I think many parents do these things not realizing the damage that is being done to to the student and to the child's life. And so I think a lot of education needs to be out there in every aspect of life. You talk about writers who will not, or journalists and other people who write who don't tackle the issues and the problems of human rights and the things that people are really going through in the society. And many people sort of prevent themselves from writing this for fear of criticism or for being sort of excluded from the things that they want. So at the beginning, someone was talking about, I think it was you, Charlene, mentioning about the way sometimes you are sort of prevented because you recognize what you are expected to do by the places you work or the people who have some kind of power over you. And so I just wanted to say I benefited a lot from coming, and that I am left thinking about how all of these things really are complex and how they just sort of tie into each other. There's a lot of work left for every one of us, to do. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thanks for that comment. And Jennifer is teaching in the US. Okay, so I'm sure it's a lot of what we're seeing, even though we're kind of foreground in the Caribbean, as you said, that there are ramifications across the waters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think
Caroline, I'm anxious. I really like the vibe tonight. I'm actually very surprised, but I would love to have a follow-up. And remember, we have November 15th, International Imprisoned Writers. There's something before that, but maybe we can use it as an excuse to meet again.
I don't think we need any excuse, really. I know Charlene was asking about showing a video, but what I'm going to suggest, Charlene, is that maybe we kind of bring the event to a close, and then if those who want to stay on, show it, and then who don't have who have the time can actually stay on. How would that work?
Certainly, but I've also just put it in the chat.
Oh, you did?
Watch.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm glad Clover has joined us. And Clover, anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Just to say that we need to get serious about reflecting on what we do, as I said before. So we need to now move from this to planning a serious CATALP. What should I call them? My head is not working right.
Symposium.
I'm a little out of it. But we really need to come together to form some plan of action, as Charlene keeps saying. We need to act, and stop talk, so that we start to impact academic literacies. We chose academic literacies for a purpose, right? Because it's about reflecting, empowering, and so on. So we need to start. Something.
Yes, we've moved from the use of English and those terms that center kind of English at the center of what we did, to academic literacies, to skills which have, of course, this empowering ability. And so, yes, Charlene has mentioned, Clovis mentioned in a plan of action, so the executive will, on the basis of, this conversation, this discussion, this afternoon, try to keep the momentum going and move from that into some kind of plans to tackle some of the specific issues, very complex ones that have been raised here, and also to be more visible and to be getting out to the public in various forms. We need to start to really exploit podcasts and all of those new ways of communicating that the younger generation, will receive and will be open to. But there's a lot of work for us to do. But I thank all. I looked at at one point we had up to 24 people at the forum. It was a kind of last minute attempt that we said, you know, we just went with it and hoped we would get some support, which we did. And so we really want to thank the presenters, Karen Asgarali, Kiefer Burke, Velma Pollard, Karin Bouliar, and Cheryl Ann, and all of the participants for supporting us like this. And to say that you will hear back from us. We are committed. We are committed to trying to, as Tova says, you know, and find space and, you know, reduce the, you know, that feverish marking that we're continually doing and not being able to reflect and chart new courses. So thanks to everyone, and we'll see you at the next event, I hope.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good night.
Thank
And
you.
stay safe,
Have a
everybody.
good night.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.